Konstantin Kisin and Francis Foster from Trigonometry recently interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu, and it's given them a lot of opportunities outside of the actual interview to talk to mainstream media sources about the actual interview that took place. And they did a brilliant job of the interview. If you haven't seen it, definitely go and do yourself a favor and check it out, because it is 40 something minutes of very important questions being asked. I get that Netanyahu didn't necessarily answer the questions to a great deal of my satisfaction. I mean, I think he missed out on a few points, like to me at least. But nevertheless, it was still a great conversation, and credit to Konstantin and Francis for having him on. And I mean, seems like Piers Morgan missed out or lost out big time, because Piers is just a shock jock. No one wants to really do an interview with Piers Morgan anymore, I don't think. I think his time in the fame is dwindling ever so thinly. But anyway, Konstantin and Francis, time for them to rise up big time. But Konstantin went on GB News recently to talk about the actual interview that he had with Netanyahu. And the thing is, people, what I've been noticing at least, people will say, oh, Israel has a right to defend itself, but when it actually does defend itself, they seem not to support any part of it. And I'm talking about our politicians. I'm also talking about now people are going, well, enough's enough. Israel, wrap it up, hurry it up. Come on, Megyn Kelly yesterday with Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example. They've had enough. They're like, oh, we can't keep defending Israel because we say that, oh, I'm defending Israel, but to a point, to a certain extent, right? And I can't go beyond that, because Israel has just got to stop it. They just got to knock it off. They got to let Hamas still rule, because we're sick and tired of the propaganda machine in full swing from Hamas. So when Israel does defend itself, and when they say to the last hostage, we're going to get them back, we're going to get all our people back, they damn well mean it. And I don't think they really care too much about what the leaders of the world have to say now, because the leaders of many countries, including my own, even though he's not my prime minister, Albanese, Starmer, Macron, Carney, the whole lot of them, they're turning their backs on Israel. And let me just be clear, it's not the Australian people, it's not the British people, it's not the French, it's not most of the Canadians. You know who it is? It's the dingbat leaders. They're choosing to do it. A poll was done from Nine News, a left-leaning news outlet. 74% of Australians don't agree, don't align with Albanese's decision to recognize a Palestinian state. Poor timing, Albo. And tensions are starting to rise between the Western countries in Israel. Netanyahu slammed Albanese again last night on Sky News, and he's constantly slamming Starmer. They're ostracizing Israel, our actual ally. And, you know, the thing is, Konstantin had something to say about this on GB News. Have a watch.
But you're right. Not only does he say that Keir Starmer's behavior is shameful, I think the other point he made, and I think is a very powerful point, particularly given the debate you've just hosted, Martin, when he talks about weakness. Look at what we are discussing in our country. And the world is looking in on Britain. We are talking about tens of thousands of people crossing the border, and we're going, well, it might not even be a criminal offense. We can't really arrest them. We can't really... And when you see that, you can hardly blame people outside looking in on this and going, this is weak.
And Konstantin, we've heard a lot of people since the beginning saying, put yourselves in the shoes of Israel. If our country was invaded, I don't know, by the French and 1,400 people were murdered, probably a lot of people saying we have a right to attack our enemy and to defend ourselves. But that seems to have been hugely missing from this conversation. And why do you think it is that those in the West seem to have been very sympathetic towards Palestine since the very beginning?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we saw, Martin, as I'm sure you did, that on October the 8th, there were pro-Gaza protests on the streets of London before Israel had even done anything in response to the horrific attack on October the 7th. So I think that tells you quite a lot about some people's motivation. I think there are also lots and lots of people in our country who are rightly horrified by the images they see streaming out of a war zone in a way that we frankly have never seen before. And I suspect that had we had the same level of visual access to Dresden during World War II or to the other parts of previous conflicts that Britain has been engaged in, we would have been equally horrified. But I think the Prime Minister Netanyahu made a good point, which is something he said during the interview as well, which is that people say Israel has a right to defend itself, but when it actually does defend itself, they don't seem to support that part of it. And so it is lip service to an idea. And also, this is something a friend of mine who I won't quote because I don't want to cause problems for him, but a very well-known comedian who watched the interview and loved it. And he said to me, one of the things that stands out for me is we're all familiar with this Queers for Palestine phenomenon, which is people who would be thrown off a roof the moment that they set foot in Gaza, supporting the regime Hamas that actually would do this. Well, in some ways, I think it's fair to say that many of us in the West are so safe and so comfortable where we are that it's very difficult for us to empathize with a country like Israel, which is surrounded by enemies that have invaded it time and again throughout history, and who are responding to the fact that they have a terrorist state on their border that's just committed a gigantic atrocity against them and is seeking security. Now, I think there are legitimate questions about how that conflict has been prosecuted, which we put to Prime Minister Netanyahu in the interview. And I think that's really what this discussion needs more of. I think Israel has been doing terribly in terms of its public profile and the PR war, if you might say. So, and Prime Minister Netanyahu acknowledges this in our interview. And I think they need to come out and explain what it is that they're doing, why they're doing, and challenge many of the lies that we have seen on our screens. I'm sure many of your viewers would have seen that horrific photo of an emaciated child in his mother's arms. I remember somebody showing it to me on a phone and saying, this is an iconic picture from this war. And then we find out 2 days later it's a complete fabrication. The child, in fact, has a genetic condition. The entire family is well fed. So we've had this stream of propaganda. And I think what the interview we were lucky to host on Trigonometry signifies is the Israeli authorities are increasingly understanding that they're losing the PR war, and they want to get their message out there. And as I say, we challenge them fairly but robustly, and I think people will really enjoy seeing that.
Ever heard the saying, ignorance is bliss? Well, lots of people today are no longer ignorant because we have access to images, to videos that we never would have had before. The internet has done a great deal of damage. We have more information at our fingertips than ever before. And you know what that's done? It's created propagandists. It's created a great deal of activists that don't really know what the hell they're talking about because they're reacting emotionally to something that they've seen on a screen. And what they're seeing on the screen usually is one-sided. Not the other side, but one-sided. Now, Netanyahu has agreed that Israel is not doing a great job in the propaganda war because they haven't really been they've been busy. It seems like the West is doing a lot of the propaganda for Hamas. Lots of people hate Israel for going in to Gaza and trying to wipe out a known terrorist group. And they're going, oh, look at what Israel is doing. Look, the thing is, war is horrible, but no, I don't see anyone condemning Hamas. I don't see anyone calling for Hamas to release the hostages. I don't. In fact, I see more people condemning Israel and saying that Israel needs to give up and needs to stop, like Megyn Kelly, like enough's enough, like stop it. No. I'm never going to tell Israel to stop because I know what they're fighting for. But once again, Israel is definitely losing the propaganda war because that's what it's really about. And people are latching on to these ideas, and the vast majority of it is all wrong. So Israel does need to do a better job at counteracting a great deal of Hamas propaganda and creating a world whereby people actually know the truth. Because we've got so many useful idiots running around and it's causing problems. It ain't good. It's doing a lot of damage to Israel. Don't know if you guys have noticed that. So anyway, I thought what Konstantin said to GB News was interesting. And like what he said at the end, everyone's like, well, Israel has a right to defend itself. I can agree with that. But there's always a but, isn't there? But when they actually do, no, they got to stop or they got to wrap it up quick, smart. Because I'm sick and tired of seeing the images that I'm seeing. War's horrible. I think more people need to become ignorant now. Don't you? Anyway, that's enough from me, but you guys take care. Be blessed, and I'll see you all in the next video.